is that you really got to clearly explain the point of why you're meeting. And this is what the pain point is for most agents that can't even get consultations, is they can't explain to the person on the phone why we're meeting.
Yeah, they can't articulate why this is important.
Yeah, and the buyer doesn't understand what the process is or why they're meeting. And so they're like, well, what are we doing, right? So you need to be able to articulate in very clear terms. There's 3 big things that I like to explain to a buyer what we're going to do. The first thing is to walk them through the home buying process. Pretty simple.
Super simple, guys. This is it. Write this down. First step, I'm going to walk you through the home buying process.
Right. Second step, we're going to talk about the market to make sure you understand what's happening. Why is that helpful?
Well, I want to know what's going on in the market. Is it a buyer's market? Is it a seller's market?
Welcome to the Growth Drivers Podcast, the show where we break down the leadership frameworks, mindset shifts, and strategies that fuel entrepreneurial success, personal transformation, and business breakthroughs.
I'm Rachel Novak.
And I'm Mike Novak.
Let's dive in and start driving your growth.
All right, today we're talking about the proven buyer consultation that's responsible for a 95% signing rate. I'm pretty excited for this one. This is something that we've worked on and continue to enhance over the last 8 years that we're going to unpack and share with everyone today.
Love it.
Yeah. So let's go back to 2024. That's when NAR really rolled out all of the changes that kind of caught our industry red-handed a little bit, right? Like, they're like, hey, you have to get signed buyer agency agreements to go show houses to buyers.
Well, they wanted
what a concept.
Yeah, I mean, they wanted to create agency just like the listing site has, right? Like, we don't work with sellers. We're not going to start working the pre-listing process with a seller client who's going to list their house with us without listing paperwork, without that contractual agreement that we're going to work together, right? And there hasn't been that requirement on the buy side for a really long time at all.
Right. So I think it is kind of like, like implication versus expectations.
Exactly.
Like, what is the implication of what we're doing here? And there was a lot left to the imagination for both the buyer and for the buyer's agent, I think.
Exactly.
Sometimes assumptions on both sides.
Yeah.
It
wasn't systematized, right? Like with the listing side, people could create processes because there was assurances and contractual obligation and agency in place. And on the buy side, like, okay, well, I'm going to show these people 50 houses and they can totally ghost me and I have no recourse, right? But it really, what it did, like you said, it shined a light on the agents saying, have you actually set expectations well? Like, what does this contractually mean for you working with a buyer? What are you going to invest with them? What are you, what does the agency actually look like representing a buyer? And that's what this really shone a light on.
Right. There's really no explanation of the process. There was no explanation of articulation of what you're going to do for them, right? No clear strategy on what you're going to do. No expectations set. So it was just kind of like a melting pot of missed expectations, right, with buyers. And I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of like industry veterans for years have said like, hey, I'm just going to focus on listings. Like, a lot of agents I know that are top agents, they don't even work with buyers because of these headaches that come with it. You know what I mean? So,
and because it's not as easy to create a process, right? To create a formula that you can duplicate client after client.
Right. And so, obviously, like, most agents weren't doing consultations, very few, if any. They were just kind of like running around and showing people the person's houses, as the person wanted to see them. That was basically the process. It's like, okay, cool. This person reached out to me. They want to buy a house. Let's just go show them houses. Well,
the issue was that it's been implied for so long, and it still is, that the buyer doesn't pay the agent anything. So there's almost this like, well, it's okay because you don't pay me anyway, right? So there didn't need to be like a formal process. And therefore, buyer agents or people who worked with buyers agents who work with buyers didn't necessarily need to say, this is the value that I'm bringing you and how I'm earning that money.
Right. And the important distinction is that you're a fiduciary to that buyer.
Exactly.
Right? So it's a really big mismatch, Why do you think agents freaked out so bad? I mean, it was like burn the boats kind of situation. I'm not part of any real estate groups anymore online just because I don't want to see the bullshit that's in there. But I just saw from friends on Facebook posting left and right about this. They were like literally freaking the fuck out.
I think it had everything to do with the fact that because they kind of got caught, so to speak, in the fact that they didn't actually have a process to explain to buyers what value they bring, right? Like one of the biggest things we as agents do for buyers is help them discern walking into a situation. Like, yes, we negotiate the deal. Yes, we write the contract. Yes, we show them tons of houses. Yes, we'll work for 30, 40 hours for a client before we even get paid, right? That's the trade-off. But one of the things that we actually do to help them is we discern for them. They don't know what they don't know. That's our job, to know what they don't know and then teach them and educate them and consult with them through that process. Agents did not at all understand how to convey that value. They had no idea how to say, do you want to work with me, right? Because so many people could default to being representing buyers because you didn't have to claim agency. You didn't have to have a process. You didn't have to have like a huge investment of time or value up front. As a listing agent, that's what you do. That's why so many people wanted to do just listings, because they had earned it. They know what they do. They know their value. So all of a sudden, all of these baby real estate agents said, I've never had to explain to a buyer what I do. I don't know how to even convey the value that I bring.
Right. I think that NAR didn't help this, the National Association of Realtors. And one of the reasons they didn't help it is because they kind of did an overhaul of buyer agency from top to bottom. So with this change, there was multiple other changes. Mm-hmm. I think that some of those changes created a fear or a doubt as to whether there would still be buyer agent compensation, right? So that invoked a lot of fear in people, right?
Exactly.
They're like, oh my God, buyer agents are dead. They're never going to get paid again. Sellers aren't going to pay them anymore. Buyers are going to have to pay them. How's that going to work? No buyers are going to do this, right?
Exactly.
And the reality is none of that came true.
No, the market has not changed.
Actually, most commissions have gone up on the buy side since this change because it made commissions part of the conversation now, right?
Exactly.
Like, hey, I'm going to explain to my buyer how much I expect to get paid for representing you, and I'm going to go fight for that for the seller to pay for it. Mm-hmm. So you're seeing like commissions that are at like 2 or 2.5% pushed up to the full 3% now because that's on the table, right?
Exactly.
I was doing that for like 5 years ago on our market, and agents were freaking out. I mean, like, what do you mean? We're offering 2.5. I'm like, well, that's not what I'm asking for. I'm asking for you to pay the 3% that we have an agency agreement for.
Exactly.
So, our team was ahead of this. In 2018, we rolled out a very comprehensive buyer process, and then we tested it like over 1,000 times.
Yeah,
which is pretty cool. Like it's been a work in progress. It was by no means perfect right out of the gates, but we got most of it right almost immediately, and then we just kind of enhanced and tweaked it and optimized it to make it what it is today, which is a really good process where the buyer feels exceptionally well taken care of. Really clear expectations are set between the buyer and the buyer's agent. It's duplicatable, like all of our agents have mastered this as well. You sign paperwork before you go show houses, and it's just a really good way to represent a buyer.
Well, what this did, and what the buyer consultation does, is it establishes you as the professional, right? One of the reasons that I think real estate agents have, or maybe had, a kind of a bad reputation, right? Like similar to a used car salesman kind of reputation, and yet we are talking significantly more money and more risk that we broker these deals, right? That we write these contracts for. And because there was no process, because we didn't establish ourselves with the general public as a professional, say, this is the process, this is what I will do for you, like showing your commitment to the job that you're agreeing to, that because there wasn't any of that before this time. When we established that, that's what made our reputation grow so well. And that's what really created a ton of success for us, because people came into our process, we sat down, we explained exactly what we do, and 95% of the time they were like, thank you for explaining all of that. Now I know what to expect in this process. I feel like I'm ready to go buy a house. Where some people are talking about it, they're excited about it, they're wishy-washy, but they do it all out of order, and the agent doesn't rein them in and say, this is what we need to do, this is the process. So this has helped a ton of people actually understand the process. And then also, again, like I said, establish us as a professional. We've always said, you don't go to the dentist, you don't go to the doctor, you don't go to the chiropractor, you don't go to any professional business and just wing it and just say, well, go ahead and crack away, like we'll see what happens. It's like, no, they have an intake process, they have intake forms you have to fill out, they have liability waivers you have to fill out and sign, they have to do x-rays or whatever it is, right? They have an intake process. And real estate, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars this person's going to spend, and you don't have an intake process, you don't have a sit down expectation setting process, ridiculous. So that's exactly what we created in 2018 and have been practicing since.
Yep, exactly. So today we're going to share with you 5 ways to crush your buyer consultations. This is by no means like an end-to-end solution. We actually have a 58 module masterclass that does a deep dive into this and our listing process as well. You can get that for $487 on our website, so we can link it down below as well. But if you want like to really understand this at a deep level and also see like our buyer's guide, our listing guide, grab that and you can self-educate at a very, very deep level and really understand this stuff. But the first thing that I want to highlight is that you really got to clearly explain the point of why you're meeting. And this is what the pain point is for most agents that can't even get consultations, is they can't explain to the person on the phone why we're meeting.
Yeah, they can't articulate why this is important.
Yeah, and the buyer doesn't understand what the process is or why they're meeting. And so they're like, well, what are we doing, right? So you need to be able to articulate in very clear terms. There's 3 big things that I like to explain to a buyer what we're going to do. The first thing is to walk them through the home buying process. Pretty simple. Right?
Super simple, guys. This is it. Write this down. First step, I'm going to walk you through the home buying process.
Right. Second step, we're going to talk about the market to make sure you understand what's happening. Why is that helpful?
Well, I want to know what's going on in the market. Is it a buyer's market? Is it a seller's market? Do I have to overpay for a home? Can I afford a home?
Yeah, there's a lot of obviously myths about market and misunderstandings. This is a chance to really educate, right? And the third thing is we're going to really understand and have a deep conversation about what we actually are looking for in the home. And so we break that down into must-haves and nice-to-haves. Must-haves are like the non-negotiable hard stop features you have to have, and then the nice-to-haves. We also frame the geographical location with which we're going to look, and we usually start pretty broad, and we hone it in once the search really starts going.
And I have to just like press on this last point, right? Sitting down, figuring it out, what they're looking for, what absolutely non-negotiable for them, what's an absolute must, what are things that'd be really nice to have, but they, for the right property, right location, they could do without. It is amazing how many times we've sat down with people, especially couples, and the one partner, one spouse had no idea that the other one was like absolutely dead set on this age of a home or this neighborhood or whatever it was. And so that is the perfect time to hash out between a couple, what are your must-haves together, not what yours are Sally and yours are Joe, and then we'll try to find something. It's like, no, now is the time that we decide what can you live with, what do you have to have on both sides. And it's because that may evolve, but people trying to figure that out as they're walking through homes, like if you don't sit down and have a consultation and you walk through with this couple in this house, wife 10 out of 10 absolutely loves it, wants to write an offer, and husband's like, well, it doesn't even have space for my motorcycle, so I'm not buying this, right? Like you don't want to find that out while showing houses.
Usually when I talk to a couple and I'm like, so what do you guys looking for in a house? They usually stare at each other and they're like, well, I don't know.
Right.
What do you want? Well, what do you want? Well, okay, let's have this conversation. You're almost like mediator,
Exactly.
Trying to find the commonalities. But that's like super, super important, is to explain those 3 things. Just to say it again, like we're going to meet so I can walk you through the home buying process, get you up to speed on the market, and identify exactly what we're looking for in your next home. Those 3 things. Get very good at saying that. And then close that call with confidence. A lot of buyers, agents are very passive and they'll just be like, how does that sound? Or would you find value on that? And those are like really, really passive language patterns that don't breed a lot of confidence.
Exactly.
Right? So what might be some other alternatives that people could use?
Like, this is the next step. Like, the logical next step is we meet, we do this. Does 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock tomorrow work?
Right. And we call that the A or the B close, which is just 2 options. It's not like yes or no. It's like which one.
Exactly. So, I mean, think of it like this. Like when somebody says to you, so say a doctor's office, you're calling in for an appointment and the doctor's office says, okay, well, when would work for you? Like, so broad. Like, well, I could do Tuesday at 5, or I could do Wednesday at noon, or I could do Saturday at 10. Like, you're not going to, it's too broad. Whereas if they said, does a Thursday work? Yes. Okay, great. Would 4 o'clock or 6 o'clock work better? Boom. Like, very confident, very succinct. Now we've kind of pushed them into the box that works for them and it works for you. And that way you also have control over your schedule. So they're not saying, oh, well, can we do Friday at 9 a.m.? Well, then I'd have to sacrifice my power hour time, or I'd have to sacrifice something else in my life that's important. So you then have control over that schedule time, which we've talked about that in previous podcasts, but.
Yep. So that's the first of 5. Explain why you're meeting. Number 2, build trust and authority before you even meet. I like to send 2 videos to the person. You can automate this through Calendly. Connect Calendly to your calendar and then book the appointment yourself and send them 2 videos automatically through text and email. The first video I like to send them is just one that walks them through the process of buying a home. It just is going to make the meeting more relevant. They're going to understand it at a deeper level. They're going to hear the information for the second time when you meet now, which seems very helpful. And the second one is why work with you? And that's like, what do you do different than every other agent? You know, there's hundreds and thousands of agents. You need to get very good at articulating why you are the obvious choice and what exactly do you do different than most agents?
So what kinds of things do you do different, Mike Novak?
Like we show houses 7 days a week, right? We have the ability to show homes because of showing leverage and showing partners 7 days a week. We have an app just for our clients to control their entire home search. So we take like all of the searching off of their plate. Mm-hmm. We do it for them to make sure that they are going to see homes as soon as they come on the market that match what they're looking for. We have transaction coordination, like specific people in our organization that walk them through the process once they actually go under contract, make sure everything gets done when it's supposed to get done. We work with the best lenders, so we got very deep relationships on that side of things. There's just a lot of little things that we do to make sure people have a great experience.
And to be clear, if you're a solo agent or even an agent on a team and you don't have a TC on your team, or you don't have, leverage in that way, it's okay to say that you do if you have partnerships within the industry where you cover each other, right? Like that would be showing leverage is okay. I will show for Sally when she's going out of town, then she's going to cover me when I'm out of town. And if you do have a TC pay profile, then you do have contract coordination. And if you have a relationship with a lender, you do have a great relationship. So you can duct tape together a team, so to speak. It doesn't all have to be truly on your team, but that's a huge highlight for people that they may not know is if you've got resources, the transaction coordination, the lending, contractors, vendors, you have a huge package. You have a lot of value to bring to those buyers.
Yeah, not a good point. They don't have to be like, employees of yours. They could be 1099 contractors.
Exactly.
Number 3 is dial in your buyer's guide. Ours has been a continual work in progress. It's about 30 pages long now. We only go through about 7 pages. The most important 4 pages to me are the overview of buying a home. Like that's where I spend the bulk of my time in the buyer's consultation. That's super, super important in my opinion. Explaining agency is also really important. Like, what does a buyer agent do? What does a listing agent do?
Yep.
Are you going to represent both parties? If so, why?
Yeah.
Like, you better be able to explain that.
Yeah. Why not to go to an open house alone? Like, this explains why if you go to an open house alone and say the listing agent is holding their own house open and you start talking to that person about what your wants, needs, and dreams are, well, then they have leverage, right? That they can use against you.
And being transparent about what about your listings? What if I want to buy one of them?
Yeah, exactly.
Then what happens?
Yep.
I've been asked that multiple times,
Same.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And some agents, really hang their hat on dual representation. So if that's you, get really confident and clear on why that's good for your clients.
Yep.
Yeah.
But have something.
And send me a message and make sure I understand.
Yeah.
Too.
Can you teach me too? Yeah. No, just kidding.
Closing costs are really misunderstood. We have a page explaining closing costs, both what the buyer pays and what the seller pays. So it's very clear. If you don't explain that, they're going to be left to wondering what it means. Mm-hmm. So it's really important. Mm-hmm. And then the most important maybe is also the next steps page. Like, what do we do from here? And that's kind of like the segue to closing and actually signing paperwork.
Yes.
And my favorite close, it's really, really complicated. You just say, would you like me to be your agent?
Say it again.
Would you like me to be your agent?
Would you like me to be your agent? That's it.
That's it.
And so
I do say the next steps are to decide to work together. Would you like me to be your agent?
Exactly. Yes. So, and to go back to like step 1 in this, right? The key pages of this buyer's guide, the overview of the process, that, visualize a roadmap of the process. Like, what do we do first? Then what does the next step look like? Then what is the next step? And what do these different phases all entail, all the way to getting the keys, right? We break ours down into 4 phases. Again, you can go find our thewarrioragent.com masterclass. We'll link it below, where we literally give you a copy of ours if you want to see it. But this is where in that first step, and I always point this out in step one is to meet with your agent and walk through the buying process. And I literally say that to them as we're sitting together to go through the buying process. And kind of giving that foreshadow of like, great job, you're already on step 1. Like, next thing would be that we decide to work together, and then we get to go through these other steps. I'm saying that in the beginning of the buyer agent or the buyer consultation, so that they know by the end of the buyer consultation what I'm going to ask. It's not a surprise.
Yeah.
So at the end, like you said, okay, like, would you like me to be your agent?
Yeah, no, naming that you're going to sign paperwork is very important early on, for sure. Number 4 is following a timeline for your consultations. Like there should be some structure and process to this that gives consistency, right? So I like about the first 5 to 10 minutes to be catching up, reaffirming what you've already talked about on the phone or on text, like really understanding what their current living situation is, getting to know them better.
Get to know them better. Yeah. Don't even open the buyer consultation book. Don't open the paperwork.
Don't go right into presentation mode.
No, get to know them as people. What do they want? What do they like? What do they enjoy? What are they excited about in this process? Like, what are they, that's a really important part.
Yep. And then the next 20 to 30 minutes go through that buyer's guide, right? And I would say, like, for me, most of that time is on that roadmap of buying a house. That's usually enough time. Like, if you go longer than that, I feel like people start to get overwhelmed by the amount of information you're giving them. Right. So it's important to understand that fine balance between educating them and overwhelming them.
Exactly. You want to give them kind of a preview of each phase, but you really only want to go deep on what the exact next steps are. Like, what do they need to walk out of that meeting doing and knowing to get to the next step?
Right. And the last 5 minutes, signing the paperwork and talking about the next steps. So pretty straightforward, but it works every single time. And then number 5, the 5th way to crush your buyer consultations is to get them out looking at homes quickly and follow up. You know what I mean? Like, you got to make sure that you laid out those next steps and you actually do those next steps. And usually those next steps are going to be things like setting up a search for them. It's going to be like putting them in your database on a place that you have like an active client list. It's going to be getting them connected with a lender to get them pre-approved, and then start reaching out to them like multiple times per week with listings.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So, if you're local, if you have like, or whatever in your MLS, say you have an IDX website and you set them up on a search there, great. Well, you also want to set up a search in your IDX website to yourself for that client. That's what I have done a lot. So yes, I can go check the hot sheets every single day, but if I'm getting directly emailed the second things are hitting the market and for that client, then I can go into, our IDX website and text them the links to those homes right away before they may even see the ping.
Yeah, what I do with my hot buyers, like the ones that are ready to pounce, we use Real Scout for listing alerts, and so I just toggle that button on to BCC me, so that way I'm seeing them, and usually I'm watching them pretty close, and then I'll text them to people if I think that they're a good fit.
Love it. Yep.
So, anyways, that's our 5 ways to crush your buyer consultations. This is a good time of year. We're in December now. It's going to be a slower month for most people. It's a great time to tune up this part of your business. Make sure you've got these processes and systems in place. They will pay you dividends in 2026 if you really button this up.
And get your buyer consultation booklet done, right? Like, literally put it together. Get a roadmap put together of the process. Put buyer agent versus listing agent. What does each one do? Talk about closing costs, what the seller pays for, what the buyer pays for, and then of course the next steps. Like, even if your buyer consultation packet is 3 or 4 pages right now, you have something to show them that gives them value. So get that done, get it ready to use, and practice on it. Practice in the mirror, make it awkward.
Yep, 1000%. All right, awesome. Well, we will see you next week. If you're buying or selling in our market and you're wanting to do one of these things for the next 6 months, reach out to us. There's a link down below. You can go to meetthenovags.com. If you're an agent, we network and sponsor agents across the country and Canada to come to Real Brokerage with us. If that's something you're interested in, definitely reach out to us. And we also have a masterclass that's going to teach you a lot of what we talked about today at a very, very deep level.
That's right.
We'll see you next week.
See you next time.
That's a wrap on today's episode of Growth Drivers.
If you found value in this conversation, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with a fellow entrepreneur.
For more insights, tools, and resources, visit us at thewarrioragent.com.
Keep pushing forward, keep leading with purpose, and we'll see you next time.